recording because I had stopped it. So, okay, I see it recording now. Yeah, you're good now.
Okay, we got a few people in so far.
Can you make me the co-host? Can you go where my name is on the right-hand side and does it allow you to make me a co-host? Okay, cool. All right, cool. All right.
Okay, so I need to put it on Facebook Live.
Yeah.
On Facebook.
Do you hear that noise, that feedback?
Yeah. Hang on. You should.
Let me see if the Dr. Cunningham. All right, I'll let him Dr. Cunningham.
Yeah, never mind.
Okay.
You're gonna let them know participants are encouraged to keep their responses to under 3 minutes.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah. I'm just trying to get this live thing set up. It's just slow as heck, man.
That's some good.
Oh my gosh, this computer is so slow. What's the name of the thing?
It's called the what is it again? Goodness. Let's see. Conversation with elected officials.
So again, you say, ladies and Peter, don't say the date and don't say the time here. Peter?
Huh?
Don't say the date and don't say the time.
What does that mean?
Don't start off and say it's now 8 a.m., 8 p.m.
No. I won't.
Okay.
I'm just getting the live thing. No, I'm on this thing. Okay. So, all right. Are you ready to go live?
Yeah. No, not yet. Give it another 2 more minutes.
Okay, I already started live because if I don't do it, it's going to time out.
Okay. We're starting live on.
Jedias.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to start letting in. Oh my gosh, this computer is so. Okay.
You want me to start letting people in?
Okay. Let me. I got it now. Let me go ahead and start letting them in. Okay, I got Richard Campbell coming in. Okay. I got Angela Denise.
Hello?
Oh,
Okay, I want to make sure my audio is good.
sounds very good.
Thank you.
We're just waiting.
Welcome, Commissioner.
Hey, what's
Just here.
up?
Mr. Moderator, so far I'm just waiting on the other officials to come in. Okay. Good afternoon, Commissioner Colbert.
Hello, how you doing? Hello all.
We're just waiting. I'm just waiting for the other officials before we officially begin the meeting. Okay.
Where's everybody? It's 8 o'clock now.
Yeah, so far, I haven't seen the other officials as yet. I'm just waiting to. Just to give you an update, we're still waiting on the other participants to join the meeting. Other participant meeting elected officials. Welcome, Commissioner Grant. How you doing? You're muted. You're muted, so we can't hear
Oh,
you.
I'm muted? Okay. It says I'm unmuted.
We can hear you now.
Oh, you can hear me now. Okay, great.
Welcome, Mayor Messam. How you doing? Just to give you guys an update, since we're live, we just got to notify the live audience that we're waiting on the other elected officials to join.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, if you notice that you want us to continue after a certain time, just let me know, and I'll just go ahead and just add everyone as they come. Okay? You're muted.
Yes, yes. So let's give them a couple more minutes and then we shall start. I know Mayor Rogers said she would be starting 10 minutes late, and Commissioner Marlon Bolton said that he would be at least 10 to 15 minutes as well. But everybody else was scheduled to be on time.
For those who are currently watching on Facebook Live, update is that we're just waiting for a few more elected officials to join, and then we'll continue the meeting.
Facebook Live is going on where? On what? Whose site?
On the Jedias site, Jamaica Diaspora Southern US site. We have a couple of officials who are just running a bit late, so we're just going to give them the respect for the time that they asked for, 10 minutes, and then if the moderator decides to move on, we'll just go ahead and move on.
Good evening, everyone. We're not starting yet. Let me apologize for the late start. Everyone, yeah, Peter, Commissioner Campbell is waiting on you to let him in.
I already did. You want my count? Just 1 second.
Mayor Messam is waiting on you to let him in.
I already did. Maybe it's a connection issue they have. There he is. He showed up back. Mayor Messam is back in the room. And I'll keep on waiting to see if they show up. They show up on the list. So far, it's not showing that they're waiting, but I've already let them in. So what I'll do at this time is the moderator. It's 10 minutes after. I'll just go ahead and monitor the waiting list, the green room.
So let's start with what we have. We have 3 commissioners. We have Commissioner Denise Grant from the city of Lauderhill. We have Commissioner Alexandra Davis from the city of Miramar. And we have Commissioner Yvette Holberg. So let's start, Peter.
You also have Vice Mayor Chambers and Mayor Messam.
Okay, yes. All right. So greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very important conversation titled Pandemic, Protest, and Progress. My name is Dr. Allan Cunningham, and I'm your moderator for tonight's discussion. Usually at this time, I would ask Father Ward, but he's not present, so I'm going to ask the Special Projects Director for the Jamaican Men of Florida, Dr. Jason Anthony, to say a word of prayer.
Please join me in a word of prayer. Father God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this blessed day. We ask that you bless this time right now as we come together, as we seek your presence and hear your voice. We lift up everybody here, and we thank you for their presence. We lift you up, we give you praise, and in your wonderful name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Prendergast. I would also like to use this opportunity to recognize the President of the Jamaica Diaspora, Southern United States, Dr. Rosemary Lewis, who is here as our guest. Welcome, Dr. Lewis.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
In the past 6 months, we have witnessed the introduction, spread, and devastation of the coronavirus. We have also witnessed the resurgence of a racial divide that has gotten global attention due to the death of Mr. George Floyd and other persons of color by members of the police force. We know that times of crisis have historically also been opportunity for change, and perhaps this could be a chance to create a better economic and social opportunities for the disadvantaged people of color, as well as a more robust and favorable healthcare institutions for people of all races, but especially in the Jamaican diaspora. We have in our midst some of the most articulate and strategic leaders of our time in our communities. We have commissioners, we have mayors, and those who haven't signed on yet will be signing on shortly, I am certain. These elected officials have demonstrated the type of leadership that embodied who we are as a culture, as a people, and further ratify our motto as out of many, one people. Our panelists include Commissioner of the City of Lauderhill, Commissioner Denise Grant, Vice Mayor of the City of Miramar, just realized that he has signed in, Vice Mayor Maxwell Chambers, welcome sir. Commissioner Alexandra Davis, Commissioner Yvette Holberg, and I'm certain that the hardest working man in the county, Broward County Mayor Dale Holness, will be signing in shortly. Mayor Messam, Commissioner Richard Campbell, Commissioner Marlon Bolton. I think they're trying to sign in for some reasons. I think there are technical issues. But nonetheless, yes, they'll let you in. That's fine. Mr. Parliamentarian, there are two commissioners waiting to join.
I'm actually looking, but I'm not seeing their names showing up, so I'm just waiting to see it pop up. Maybe there's some connection issues going on in there.
So perhaps you could.
I'll give them a call and speak to them.
Yes. Again, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, commissioners and mayors, for joining in. The population we serve are particularly vulnerable right now. Commissioner Denise Grant,
Sir.
what is your perspective on the current pandemic?
Well, I think at this time, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your forum. We definitely are going through some different times. We have never seen this before. I think that we are experiencing two pandemics, one having to do with COVID-19 and the other curtailing the Black Lives Matter movement. And we are definitely living in the dawn of a new day. And as leaders, the things that we need to do at this time is, number one, be knowledgeable, being able to provide information to our community, which is essential. Number two, be active, ensuring that the resources and the assistance that we have at our disposal is being effectively distributed. And number three, be wise, adhering to the protective measures as it relates to COVID-19 and helping to support the Black Lives Matter movement. Oftentimes, out of evil comes good, and there are golden opportunities at this moment. I believe that this is obviously not just a national issue. This is a global issue. Two pandemics that we're dealing with now. And I do think that out of this dark moment, there are going to be great opportunities for the Black community, for the diaspora. In addition to that, we have to ensure that we are positioned, which is very important, to be able to maximize the opportunities that are presented. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grant. Commissioner Alexandra Davis, same question.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cunningham. We certainly appreciate to be able to come to your listeners with this forum. And rightly so, there are two pandemics. In the city of Miramar with COVID-19, currently we're the fourth largest, we have the fourth largest outbreak in Broward County. And so it's important that as we begin to open, that we also do our enforcement. Recently, we were able to get some of the CARE Act money from Broward County to assist with the enforcement, meaning that we go to the businesses, making sure they have the proper signs, making sure they have the proper capacities so that we can kind of curtail the spread. We really rely heavily on data. And as my colleagues will say, that we do have a testing site in the city of Miramar, which is heavily used. I would hope that in the near future, we can also have an antibody testing location, which will also help us to determine how many people actually already have the virus and possibly have some immunity. In terms of the scourge of racism that's plaguing our country and has for a long time, and actually around the world, it's important that we stay engaged, we listen. We are actually trying to enact some policies here in the city of Miramar with our police department. And we hope that we will see, lasting change. I think it's our duty as elected officials to understand that we make policies, we set laws, and whereas we can empathize, we really need to be doing more and making sure that our departments know that we don't tolerate it. From the city manager up, they know that we don't tolerate racism in any shape or form in our city. And certainly that includes the police department and other departments that need to be aware of this. And we will come down heavily on folks that we find that are abusing that and are racially insensitive to Black lives.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Davis. Mr. Parliamentarian, there are a bunch of people trying to get in. I don't know what the technical issue is. Dr. Jason, could you try and rectify the problem, please?
Possibly they could be using a different name. Then it may not be coming up under their name. So we just need to verify if they're using a different name.
I have 27 persons right here trying to get in, including Father Ward, Xavier, Marlon Hill.
Okay. All right. 1 second.
Because of what I'm seeing now is just 9 participants.
Dr. Cunningham, trying to, I was speaking with one of the elected officials to try to get him in. So I'm just trying to make sure that I can mitigate any technical difficulties. Father Ward just came in. So we're getting them in. So we're working on it.
Okay, so I have 38 persons now who's trying to get it. I don't know what's going on. But
Okay, just go. It's live though, so they can see. It's live. Just go ahead.
all right, beautiful. Well, we need the participants to be at least able to. Vice Mayor Maxwell Chambers, where is he?
Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. I'm doing good, sir.
Wonderful.
So the question is, in terms of your perspective on the current epidemic.
Thank you. Let me say thank you so much for your hosting this program, and thank you so much for the diaspora and for all that you are doing so far. You have been proven and tested, and you're a part of this community, so we thank you for your service. I know you have a long way to go, but we just want to thank you at a time. Please forgive me. I'm driving around making some delivery, and my phone battery going to be pretty much gone soon. I just want to say, with this pandemic, it's really a really desperate time, and so much people are struggling and having very difficulty. And how we pull through this, going to say something about who we are moving forward. And the elected official in the community, not just the city of Miramar, but represent this community, and stepping up and trying to reach out and making sure folks can get by on a day-to-day basis. Well,
Parliamentarian, could you mute everyone else, please? Sorry about that, Vice Mayor. Continue, sir.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cunningham. So this is a desperate time, and sometimes desperate times call for a desperate measure. So with everyone stepping up and doing the best we can, and I know the president and the governor is pushing to reopen the country and the state, but at the same time, we have to continue to adhere to the CDC guideline and following social distance. And one of the key things for us to survive this COVID-19 is to making sure that we are building our immune system and eating properly, and stuff, common stuff that was taught when we were a child growing up, to make sure we wash our hands, proper hygiene and so forth. So if we follow those guidelines, I think we're going to be okay moving forward and adhere to social distances. So I think we're going to get through this. It's a bit challenging, and we have seen over the years, before I was here, before I was born, people have gone through pandemic, and we still managed to survive. So I think we're going to get through this, and I think the city of Miramar, with the quality of elected official that we have here to help guide our residents through this, I'm confident that we're going to be okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Mayor Chambers. There is no doubt that racial divide and inequality has been in existence for centuries. Mayor Messam, how do you see the effects of the killing of George Floyd and the resulting global protest affecting us in the diaspora?
Thanks so much, Dr. Cunningham, for the question, and it is an honor to join many distinguished members of the diaspora on this call. You've raised a very important question in regards to the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd. I don't think his killing singularly, isolated by itself, is the trigger. I think his killing actually was the tipping point of what has been a persistent pandemic in this country. Basically, the killing of unarmed Black men and women over years without the adequate justice that should meet the level of the apparent acts of very bad officers across this country. It underscores the fact that this nation has yet to deal directly with race and the sins of slavery, Jim Crow, and systemic racism that has plagued people of African descent over centuries. And until this country honestly and justly face the fact of race inequality, race inequity in this nation, we will continue to see what we have been seeing. But I do think, though, as especially members of the diaspora, that brings a unique perspective to this discussion in terms of us being either born of Jamaican, being directly Jamaican born, or in my case, first generation of Jamaican descent, bring a perspective of descendants of slaves that shows the possibility of how a people stripped from its native land in Africa and as being descendants can be a bridge in regards to racial healing. We have an opportunity, especially in a position of being elected officials, to bring solutions, especially at the local level, to address the issues that allow these types of acts to happen in this country. But I think in terms of us as leaders, local leaders, we have an opportunity to really bridge the gap in this nation. In the city of Miramar, I think we have an exceptional opportunity to lead the nation. We have a very diverse community, a commission that happens to be all either Jamaican born or Jamaican descent, and we can lead, we have been leading a very diverse community. And we have an opportunity to show and lead by example across the country. So wherever the city of Miramar can continue to improve race relations in our city, and perhaps can be a model for other cities. We don't always agree on the Miramar Commission, but what I do know is that we all care about our city, and we may have different paths in how we would like to achieve these ideals that we all strive for. We all know when we work together that we can accomplish so many things in the city of Miramar. And I know that my colleagues will perhaps say the same thing, that we're always available to share best practices and share ideas as well with other elected officials, as we all work as a diaspora to not only lead by example, but to ensure that we make our communities the best that we possibly can.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor Messam. Commissioner Yvette Colburn, what is your approach to the same question?
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this program today, but also thank you for bringing us all together. I think even just this program and us all being together is a result of the pandemic that we're having. The killing of George Floyd has raised a new consciousness in all of us, including the diaspora. And the fact that we have Black Lives Matters protesting against police brutality, the fact that that has prompted organizations like the NFL for them to make changes and realize that not allowing their employees to protest was an issue. The fact that you have NASCAR banning the Confederate flag and is racist, and Quaker Oats now looking back after many years, realizing that it's time for them to make changes in their name and in their logo. It speaks volume, and it speaks volume in terms of we are in a time where we all need to look and see within ourselves and within our organization and amongst our groups, what is it that we're doing that we may either ignore or we may not realize, but that we can make a difference by making that change so that we won't be part of the problem, so that we can facilitate change and recognize that there may be some things that we were doing to hold others back, to hold ourselves back. So I think we are in a different level of consciousness, and I'm pleased to see that other organizations are making changes. And I think each and every one of us as leaders need to take a look and see how, what is going on and how we can speak up and make a difference. Because if we are silent, then we are part of the problem. So I do urge everyone within their organizations in the city of Miramar, we have, we are starting, we have already instituted a few policies, just letting folks know that we are objecting to what we saw in the video of the killing of George Floyd. That is not behavior that we accept. That is not something that we can tolerate, and we want change, and we want to see change. And it's just incumbent upon each and every one of us to start that change.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Colburn. Commissioner Denise Grant from the city of Lauderhill.
Yes, sir. Same question?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'm obviously having some issues with my video. I got many texts that they were unable to see me, so we're working it out at present, so bear with me. But anyhow, the murder of George Floyd has brought about a global outcry, obviously, an outpouring of support from people from all cultures, races, denomination, and creed. And it has sparked an international conversation regarding race relations. On the national front, people are helping to tell our narrative, the narrative that we've been saying for years, and expressing that for sure, Black lives are valuable and Black lives do matter. Politically, on the local government, we're proposing resolutions that speak about abandoning injustice, looking at racism and discrimination as a public health crisis. And so we know that in Ohio, lawmakers have proposed such a policy. And what they're looking at is saying that issues having to deal with healthcare, economic, and educational disparity leads to it being a health crisis. Cities like New York City and Miami are banned in the chokehold. And as we know, in New York City recently, they named that after Eric Gardner. And in the city of Lauderhill, we have passed a complimentary resolution regarding supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And so we are urging police departments, not just in the city of Lauderhill, but across the nation, to revisit their policies and having an oversight committee that checks the policy and the conduct. People are also taking a comprehensive look at supporting more Black businesses, which is something that we need to revisit as well if we have not already been doing so. We're creating cultural wealth, and that is essential. And good, as I mentioned previously, is emerging out of this tragic experience. So we're encouraging the diaspora, of course, to be able to vote, and who can pay great attention to all of the candidates. The ones that support these initiatives are very important. Ask the right questions And we as elected officials are just doing our part. I was on a previous forum, I would say maybe a week ago, and we talked about Commissioner Alexandra Davis and I were on that particular forum, and we were talking about policies. And she brought up an excellent point. She said, listen, we can set certain policies on a local level, but the reality is that most things come from the state and the federal. So we have to work collectively with the Broward leagues of cities and national leagues of cities, all of that, to be able to set some policies, or to also adapt policies in our cities as well. That's going to help us to move forward. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grant.
Okay.
Commissioner Richard Campbell, I think he's in. Mr. Parliamentarian, is Commissioner Campbell in?
Can you hear me?
Oh yes, thank you very much, sir.
Commissioner Campbell, I've been struggling to get in and be a part of this very important subject and very important time. It's a privilege, sir, to have the opportunity to put my small input in this whole movement.
It is certainly
I think you're hearing me.
Yes, sir. It is certainly a privilege to have you. This question is for you, sir. What are the possible solutions, if any, in this pandemic in terms of real actions that will be impactful to us in the diaspora?
Okay. I think it's a very historic moment for most of us. I think most of us can recall in the 60s that from a very distant, those of us who were in the Caribbean were able to have some sort of input in the civil rights movement here in the United States. Many of us woke up in the United States at an adult life, experiencing exactly what racism is, and it's a pleasure. It's time now for, while we're here, to make sure that we seize this opportunity and we utilize our various platform to make sure this issue do not die. We have seen so many times where the powers to be would want us to demonstrate and to talk about this issue for a week or two and give a few concessions. It's important that we do not allow this to happen at this point in time. We should keep our foot on the pedal. We should make sure that we constantly carry the message that we do not want a few reforms. We want every single reform that is now proposed. We should not be happy that, okay, a few things are done and we said at least we got something done. We should push to have this issue resolved, which has been going on for over 400 years. And those of us who are elected, we have a unique responsibility that we have a platform that many of the folks in the community are not privileged to, and we should use that privilege to ensure that we encourage our Caribbean folks not just to sit and watch, but in any way participate and make sure that we achieve our goal. I don't know if you guys are aware that 2 weeks ago, a resolution in the city of Lauderhill I placed a resolution in condemning police brutality and supporting Black Lives Matter. That is just an initial move. That is absolutely not enough for us just to put a signature on a paper. We need to be active on a day-to-day basis. I have been meeting with our police department here in Lauderhill. They are not comfortable with the changes that are taking place, and they are not comfortable with the possibility of a wide, broad change. But it's not what they want, it's what needs to be done. And I'd encourage all the cities to ensure that we examine all the things that are taking place within our borders, and to ensure that locally, whatever we can do to root out this whole idea of racism within our borders, and we have a lot to do as we move forward.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Campbell. I realize that we do have in our midst, we have the Mayor of Lauderdale Lakes, Hazel Rogers. Welcome, Mayor.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right.
Welcome.
Listening. Thank you very much, Dr. Cunningham.
So I'm going to pose a similar question to you, of course. What are the possible solutions, if any, in this pandemic in terms of real action that will be impactful to us in the diaspora?
When you speak about the pandemic, you're talking about COVID-19 and the Caribbean diaspora?
Yes, Mayor. Yes, Mayor.
Well, I can tell you we don't have a solution here in the United States. And I always say whenever United States sneeze, everybody else get a cold. So we knew it was coming to the Caribbean, right? And if you watch America, they would want you to open up your boundaries to everything they want to bring here. Okay, can you hear me? You might not be able to see me. Can you hear me? Oh boy.
We can hear you, yes.
Okay, thank you. So I would say all we have to do is know what we're doing here, and we are hoping our people at home will follow. You must continue to social distance. You must continue to listen to your health departments and make sure you're doing what we're doing here. There's nothing we can do but follow the government of this country as to how we take care of ourselves, how we sanitize, how we do everything that we must do until there's a cure or a vaccine. Something will happen because the scientists are working, but we can stem this and curb this virus and protect ourselves a little bit more. It's up to all of us, I truly believe, to do what we must to protect ourselves. Don't listen to the commercialized ones that want us to go out, spend money and act crazy, and then we'll not have enough hospital beds to host all of us. So that is my say on that.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Welcome, Commissioner Marlon Bolton from the city of Tamarac. So my question to you is the same. What are the possible solutions, if any, in this pandemic in terms of real action that will be impactful to us in the diaspora? Unmute yourself, sir.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Still getting used to technology, so I apologize there. Thank you so much for having me, and I'm sorry I'm late tonight. We can do better, and we're doing our best in this state and of course in Broward County. I have seen the increase in testing sites, and that is very, very important. I think though that testing should have been a lot more before we went down the path of closing down. Nevertheless, those decisions were made by people above our pay grade. So I believe that we're doing a lot, but more can be done. Testing sites are open. For instance, in Tamarac, we have a testing site now at the recreation center. And that testing site is open on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Walk-ins are welcome, appointments are preferred. If we continue to do this and we continue to maintain social distancing, wear our masks, wash our hands, sanitize in the absence of water, try not to go to places that are overcrowded. I believe that we can beat this thing. COVID is not going anywhere. We know that by now. It's not going anywhere unless we find some sort of cure or vaccine. But until then, we have to continue to hide from the disease. And hiding from the disease means that we are going to be flattening the curve. And that is the big thing that we want to see in Broward County and in Dade County. Flattening the curve don't mean that people aren't going to be sick. What it means is that we are not going to be sick at the very same time as Joe and Mary is sick. That means the hospitals won't be overcrowded at the same time. So once we, see the curve flattened, once we do our part in making sure that we keep ourselves and other people safe, then of course, we will be in a better place. And might I add that what a lot of people are not talking about is the destigmatization of COVID. I'll give you an example, and this has to do with the diaspora and of course, people traveling from, Florida or here to Jamaica. My sister at the start of COVID was visiting with me in Florida, and she said to me she wanted to go home before COVID hits hard and she feels like the airports are going to close and that sort of stuff. At that time, I thought to myself, maybe that's not going to be so drastic, right? And so she packed up her bag and she said that she was leaving. I thought she was, overreacting at the time. But little did I know that, the airports would be closed, the borders would be closed, that sort of stuff, and people would have been stuck. She went back to Jamaica, went to her community, only to find out that people, were saying, listen, we're going to stone you if you come outside. And it was a terrifying time for her. I mean, nobody wanted to pick her up. She had to stay in her house and that sort of stuff. So we're going to have to start working on the stigma that comes with COVID, at least for those people who are living in Jamaica. But overall, we need to continue to do our part. And Mayor Hazel Rogers, hit the nail on the head. She gave very good points. And so, once we do our part, once we stay away from the disease, once we continue to social distance and not let our guard down. I see people letting their guards down. I see people going out without their mask, and it is not a kosher decision for them to make. Don't let your guard down. Continue to social distance, and we'll be here in the diaspora.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Bolton.
Absolutely.
Is Mayor Dale Holness on the line? Okay, I guess not.
Mr. Moderator, I did not see
sir.
Mr. Holness join.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mayor of Miramar, Mayor Messam, question for you. What resources do we have as Jamaican nationals to mitigate systemic racism? As you know, that systemic racism is a form of racism expressed in the practice of social and political institutions. It lends itself to such issues as discrimination in criminal justice system, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, and of course, amongst other things, education. So, sir, again, what resources do we have as Jamaican nationals to mitigate systemic racism?
Well, here in the United States, I'm assuming the question is applying to us as residents here living in the United States.
Yes, sir.
Is my understanding. Systemic racism that wherever it exists now is the legacy product of policies, laws that have been implemented since the days and the turn of Reconstruction, from redlining to financial markets and availability to funds, to housing, to every aspect of our lives. As years have passed, many of these barriers have been broken down, but there are still legacy issues that we continue to deal with, especially in our criminal justice system, still in our financial markets, still in our health. There are disparities across the board. Studies have shown that regardless of your socioeconomic position, you in the medical, in the healthcare sector, people of African descent get less treatment, less coverage, substandard care. In our financial markets, when we are seeking funding for housing, you can have great credit. You still are pushed to higher cost loan products, and these are realities. So the resources we have available, especially here, especially in areas where we do have elected officials that control policies and regulations to change many of these institutional shackles that continue to wreak havoc, on the community at large, especially African Americans, people of African descent, who have been victims of these systemic policies that are discriminatory in nature. So it is incumbent upon us to lend on as elected official, we have the power and within our jurisdiction to change where we can change. Many of us are very knowledgeable in our areas of expertise and in areas where we may not necessarily be as voiced or as educated on issues, must be in a position to be educated on these issues so that we can use our position of influence to effectuate the change that is necessary to break down systemic racism. So we do have a political resource that is available. What I would also add is that for those of us who may not necessarily be in an elected position, you may be an entrepreneur, you may have financial means to start businesses, to be able to create your own ecosystems where you are in the position to source supply chain for your business. Seek to hire those from the community to help build up other businesses. The stronger economically we are as a community, the better we are, the better position we are to control our destiny. I think this is a point that is not emphasized enough. Whenever we are in a position where we have to depend on others, especially for economic success, economic opportunity, we're always in a passive position. But when we are in a position where we are owning businesses, where we are creating jobs, when we are the leaders of industry, and we are driving economic output, and we are the producers, and we are in a much better position to not have to worry about these systemic racist policies that impact us because we are controlling the paradigm, we are controlling our destiny. So it comes, so I would say political resources are available, and us working together on an economic front is another resource that we can use to break down systemic racism.
Well done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I will agree with what some of the comments made by, I should say all, by my colleague, Mayor Messam. But I think we need to sometimes be real and break it down a little bit, because there is, we might call it systemic racism and systemic everything. When you talk about Black Americans, African Americans, Black people, we are always the last to get information. They were the last ones to find out that they were free. So your labor was always for free when you could have been helping yourselves. But let's bring it back to where we are. We act as if in the Caribbean, there is not some type of isms going on. I know if you don't come from certain social economic class, there's always some bias against certain people. If you're not educated, there's some biases against that group of people. And if you're too light skinned, you might have special love from certain people. If you want a job, you can't get it in the bank unless you're of certain, you all know. And I talk about it all the time. And I think we're alive, so I have to be watching some of the things that I might want to say. As elected officials, we still have communities. My city is an 84% Black city. So of course, I'm gonna have some challenges getting my community to be counted. So at the end of the day, the economic resources that I would need to help my community might not be there. I don't know if you'll understand what I'm saying, because all of the dollars come based on your population. And if I have 10 people in my city and only 6 fills out my census application, then the funding I'll get is for 6 people, but I have to spend it on the 10 people that I know is in my community. So how do I get my population to understand? So we have to start knocking on doors, driving cars, taking all of my Haitian American friends, all of my Hispanic friends, and we're knocking on doors just to ensure that we get the resources that we need. Then as a city that might have some challenges more than some, if I have a contract and I'm putting that contract out to bid, and I would like for persons to be paid at least a living wage, sometimes I cannot afford to sign the contract at that level because we just can't afford it, because maybe I might even have some of my staff here in my city that might not be getting a living wage, or, you know, we want them to all make $15 an hour or $17 an hour. We might not be able to do a contract paying somebody $15 and $20 an hour, but it's something that we would like to do because we know that is the only way we can help our economy, help the businesses. We have to put in our contracts that, you know, we have, I don't care if they call it set aside, but we have to put something there so we can make sure they're hiring, you know, minority vendors. And sometimes we need to move away from saying minority vendors and just saying Black vendors, because we need to help Black people. So when we are afraid to say we are helping Black people, then we are having a problem and we are contributing to the problems that we're faced with out here. And sometimes you don't have the numbers to make those decisions, because one person, most folks believe that we can just give away government dollars. But there's accountability, and it's 5 of you on your commission, and you need to get a majority to move certain things forward. So just want
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you very much, Mayor. Commissioner Davis.
Yes, Dr. Cunningham.
I'm certain you'd like to give us your perspective in terms of what resources we have as Jamaican nationals to mitigate systemic racism.
Well, thanks for the question. First of all, though, I know as elected officials, and as many of us are on this panel, that we have a unique opportunity to make a difference, especially in the departments that fall under the cities that we serve. And specifically, when it comes to our police departments, it's important that we look at all the policies and procedures that are in place. One of the things that we did recently is made sure that in a resolution that was passed, that we ensured that our police department were following 21st century guidelines and procedures and the 8 count weight policies. It's important that, as somebody mentioned earlier, that we ban not just chokeholds, but strangleholds. It's important that we ensure that our officers are trained in illicit bias. They're trained in de-escalation tactics, and that the duty to immediately report and intervene when an officer is not following policies and procedures. It's important that we establish those and establish those early. I'm really surprised that even in Broward County, there are still some cities that don't have body cameras. I mean, that's one of the fundamental things you need to ensure that your officers, and it protects them, but it also shows what's going on in the field, and hopefully can prove what is happening if they're not following procedures. So in terms of what we can do, one of the things obviously is to get in elected office, to get in leadership positions where you can make a difference, whether it's economically in your community, whether it's policies and procedures. It's important that we're in positions of power. And I'm really happy to see across South Florida, there are so many candidates up for elections coming up in August and November. And so many of them, we hope that they get elected so they can make a difference in their community. And it's important, as I wrap up, that we look at our own, again, departments to make sure there's diversity there. A lot of times we find our fire departments, for example, they don't reflect the communities. And we have opportunities now to ensure that our hiring policies are such that we're looking to diversify and making sure that these positions, the folks look like the communities that they serve. And so that's my take on that.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Davis. Before we move on to our final questions and start to take questions from our audience, let me pause for a while to welcome the Consul General of Jamaica. Oliver Mayer, would you like to say a few words, sir?
Yes, good evening, everybody. I just came in, so not hearing the full discussion, but I just want to, again, I was saying to Mayor Holness just last night, he and I had a long discussion, and I was really saying how proud we are of all our Jamaicans who continue to do well, especially here in Florida. And so I want to, first of all, say that. I also want to say a big thank you to all the persons who came together to support. We had a number of stranded Jamaicans who were up here over the last 2 months, and we got a lot of support, and I want to thank everybody for the support, and just encourage each of us to continue to do well in our individual spheres. I think when we have such fine examples of Jamaicans moving up and paving the way and showing others that despite challenges along the way, excellence can be achieved. And I think right here in Florida, we have many examples of very strong leadership that will act as fine examples for other youngsters to emulate. So thank you for having me on the program, Doc.
Thank you very much, CG, as we call it. Commissioner Coburn, our final question before we go into taking questions from our audience. How could we as a people, culture, our nation utilize this current environment for greater economic progress?
Well, first of all, I think that as a people and as a call for us to understand that Black life matters, and if we truly believe that Black life matters, then we need to put that into action. And that means that Black life matters. We need to see it in employment. If Black life matters, then they need to be holding the same jobs. They need to have the same job opportunities as whites. If Black life matters, then they need to be getting those government contracts that we are giving to whites as well. If Black life matters, they need to have the education opportunity. They need to have the housing opportunities. It needs to be reflected in all aspects of their life. And this is what we have we have to work towards, not just to say Black Lives Matters, but we need to make sure that we are truly displaying that in what we do, how we treat others, and everything that we look at that comes before us. As a people, as Jamaican nationals, we all need to be agents of change. We all need to work on that. As commissioners, those of us that are elected, we are in a unique position at a good time that we can come together and work and make that change happen. But each of us have that responsibility. And I say to the other Jamaicans in the diaspora that we have to identify, each and every one of us has to identify ourselves, not just as Jamaicans, but as Blacks here in the United States of America, because this is a global problem, and regardless of where you live as a Black person, you are having these challenges. So I'm hopeful that everything that has transpired, whether it's COVID or the new rise of consciousness of racism, that it would truly bring us all together, and that the unity that we see will be long lasting, so that we can continue to make strides in fighting racism.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Vice Mayor Chambers, your response, sir. Is Vice Mayor Chambers still on?
Dr. Cunningham?
Yes, sir. So the question is, you there? You seem to be having...
Mr. Moderator is there, but he's having connection issues. Can you just move forward?
Let us move on to Commissioner Denise Grant. Final question for Commissioner Denise Grant.
Okay. Well, I think there has to be a mental shift. We're going through some trying times. It is definitely unprecedented. So we have to figure out how to pivot and just move with the times. We need to recognize that we have bargaining power as Black people. Our money has great value, and we need to be able to see change, as Commissioner Colbert eloquently said. Has to be change in all industries. It has to be change in healthcare. It has to be change in business. We do see some changes happening now as it relates to the NFL, but also in US soccer, it needs to be change. It has to be change on a very high level in order for us to be able to see the effectiveness of it. I also believe that, as mentioned, with Ohio lawmakers then proposing that this particular issue as it relates to racism is now considered to be a health crisis, that's important, because then it will get special attention. We understand that there are disparities, of course, in healthcare, in economics, in education, and really across the board. So what COVID-19, along with the George Floyd pandemics, have taught me is that we have to invest in ourselves. We have to take a comprehensive look at our businesses, Black businesses, being able to support those businesses, pour money into those businesses so that they can not only survive, but move from surviving to actually thriving. We need to get back to basics in promoting health and wellness and well-being of our Black people. Shopping locally is very important. Again, supporting our local businesses. And to value the Black businesses, we need to be able to recognize the value of these businesses. Oftentimes, we want to overlook Black businesses. We need to move from the mindset that we're helping. It has to move beyond charity model to a change model. And we have to make sure that, as not sure exactly who said it, but when there are contracts that are out, make sure that Black and minority businesses are also at the table. That's what we can do as well and promote that as elected official. It has to be a social change. I know that in the city of Lauderhill, some of the things that we have done is as it relates to even with this whole stimulus program that rolled out. The first time around, a lot of Black businesses, minority businesses were crying that they didn't get help. In addition to nonprofit organizations, they're going to the larger banks, they're not getting the support that they need, they're being overlooked, but their money is just as valuable. So what we have done is we partnered with the president for the Florida Banking Association, Alex Sanchez, and he was able to get smaller banks to partner with our city, that we were able to help over 200 businesses, which is very, very, very important. 79% of them were minority businesses, and I would say Black businesses as that, to be able to get the funding that they need. So as elected official, we do have the ability to bring about change. We need to be able to utilize our platform in order to do so. So it's on the political level, it's on the educational level, it's on the business level as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grant. Let me also welcome the hardest working man in Broward County, Mayor Holness. Better to be late than never, right? So I'm going to welcome you, sir, with a question as well. And the question is this: how could we, as a people, culture, or nation, utilize this current environment for economic progress as a diaspora?
Well, thank you very much for having me on. Mayor Rogers will tell you that I had a Martin County Commission meeting today that I chaired from 10 a.m. to about 8:30. So it's just a few minutes since I got off of that call. And a big part of what we must look to do at this point in time is to leverage our positions in elected office to bring about changes. We have a groundswell of people at this point in time calling for justice, and that must mean also equity. The biggest issue that we have is equity. How do we work to bring about equity for minorities, for Blacks, for people from the Caribbean? The environment is right now for social justice and for economic justice, and we have to be focused on that. When I got to Broward County in 2010, 10.25% of the business that we did was done with small business, minority, and women-owned business. Today it's 35%, and that's because I've been purposeful in doing so, in reaching out to our small business and changing the policies of government to ensure that we are bringing in opportunities for small business. In fact, one of the fight today was for a contract at the airport where I'd work to break the contract up at the airport to allow for a small minority-owned business to be a part of it. And when I got off the phone, I had to try and work some stuff to get my small business engaged, because we lost the vote 4-4. Because if you have a tied vote, it's basically a losing vote for this item to go back out for a small business to get a chance. So that's a big piece of what we got to do. Those who are listening who are not elected need to go to their city commission and county government to let them know, and school board, to let them know that they're paying taxes into the system also in order to have access to some of the money that's being spent, and push that. It doesn't have to be just because you're Black or Caribbean elected that we make the changes. You might live in a city where you're paying taxes into the system, that you need to go and demand that those money, when it's spent, is being adjusted. At Lauderhill, I started a Lauderhill Chamber of Commerce to engage folks. That chamber is still going. I also put in place the first preference for local business in Lauderhill, that if you had a business there and the government's contracting, you could bid as much as 5% and still get the opportunity to get that contract. We expanded on that in Broward County because Broward County has a much bigger budget. Our budget is $5.8 billion this past year. So there's a lot that we can do to do that. But I'll tell you something else that we ought to be doing, taking responsibility when we spend our own money with corporate America, to spend first with businesses that are from within our community, because that's how we hire each other. That's how the contribution to social programs in our community is funded. So if we are able to grow our own business, we can hire ourselves, we can create wealth and generational wealth, transferable. You know, I actually had a conversation today with Wells Fargo. We voted 8-1. I'm being the only one out because I had a conversation with Wells Fargo earlier this year and asked them about what they do to help small business, minority, and women-owned business. They told me what they did for Hispanics and other small business, but they had nothing for Black-owned business. I told them I would vote against the contract when it come up. Now, staff told me that they were pretty much the only game in town because of what they provide to us in managing the county's money. I still voted against it because I wanted to make sure I sent a message to them that we are watching. In fact, 3 of my other colleagues would have voted with me, except that staff convinced them that they were the only entity that we could do business with. So there's a lot we can do. When we also need to look at how we target our dollars. I started on this from a corporate standpoint. If we were to target our money to companies that hire us and promote us and put us in high level and use our businesses for contracting opportunities, if we target some that did that right and shun the ones that don't and shut 1 or 2 businesses down and make 1 or 2 prosper, the whole dynamics of the economy would change in America. Not only that, criminal justice and other system will be changed, because when corporate America decide that they want something changed in this country, it gets changed because they put their money and their support and their social capital behind it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we are going to take 2 questions from the audience, and I'll just read them for you right now. To the elected officials, is there one new initiative that you have undertaken responding to pandemic COVID-19 and pandemic racism and police brutality in recent weeks, or is ready to undertake now, even if it means losing your current position? An initiative that you have known was vital but had been put aside and you now realize must be developed going forward, like ensuring more mental health resources for local police, like confronting the systemic structural injustices in your city. Who wants to answer that one?
Can I touch that one, Dr. Cunningham?
Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay. I'd like to start from the mental health side of the issue, because you know and understand the stigma associated with mental health. Everybody, but I will say I know a lot of my people that they're struggling with children and other family members that they're afraid of. They won't even tell you as a social worker that they're afraid of their children, and all of these things are happening in the homes. No one wants to deal with it. But I know for a fact that we have laws in place, but if it's not funded and implemented, then what good is those legislations that you pass? I know Commissioner Holness will tell you as a county official that you have banned the box that all of us could adopt as city policymakers to make sure the last question you ask that person is whether or not they have a criminal background, because you give folks second chance if you truly want to help. If you're talking about a policy, I would go back to the same issue as it relates to law enforcement. Years ago, we did not know that all it takes was a high school degree to become a firefighter. That was never discussed in our communities until we got elected. I had 1 paramedics in my city for years, and he could not pass another test because they couldn't swim. There's a lot of challenges with our communities that we have to share information. If I'm in my city and I learn something, then I know we have Messam down the bottom, or we have someone else. If we're not having conversation, we can't learn from each other, so we can make lives better for our community and our constituents. So it starts with having communication, having conversations and sharing information so we can help our communities. And bottom line, I can tell you that is what we need. Yes, I have policies. I'm gonna continue. Yes, we have policies. We can't just give away taxpayers' dollars. They are competitive bids, but as was stated before, you can put policies in place that they have to hire minorities, okay? But then they can't get the bonding because you put another block someplace that if they need the bonding, they can't qualify either. It takes a lot. You might not win it the first year, but there's nothing anyone can tell us that we don't try. If we know about it, we're trying, but it's 5 of us on a commission, and it's gonna take 3 or 4 of your colleagues to buy into it. And sometimes we're afraid of our re-election. So oftentimes we don't say too much. I can say a lot now because I just got elected without an opponent. So I will speak for everybody else for the next 4 years.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Y'all jump in on
Go
this.
ahead, Mayor Messam.
I'll jump in on this question. I'll be measured in some of the response because the question asked about initiatives taken within the last few weeks, in the recent weeks, and something that we would be in favor of. And because of the very active Miramar Commission on this call, I don't want to say anything that could potentially come forward for the Miramar Commission in violation of sunshine laws. However, though, in terms of initiatives as it relates to the first question was the pandemic. For months when the state of Florida was establishing testing sites, I was petitioning the governor's office to have a site in Miramar. One of the challenges, however, was that there was a testing site in C.B. Smith Park to the north of us in Pines, and one at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami-Dade County in Miami Gardens, just south of us. But when the data came out that Black people were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, I continued to press the governor's office to open up a site in our 33023 zip code, which had some of the highest numbers in our city. And it would directly be of impact to people of color for them to know if they had the test. So I petitioned them with a partnership with CVS, which was a national program that I did not hear anything for months. When this report came out and continued persistence, the governor decided to open up a site in Miramar, in East Miramar, which is a walk-up site. It's one of the few sites that also tests minors, and it's totally free. And we know that that site is very active. It actually has a capacity for 200 tests per day. We're averaging well over 100 tests per day, and it's a resource that's right in the heart of our community. And I'm very happy that we as a city were able to support the allowance of that testing site, because we need to know who is positive so that they can get the resources. In addition to that, we was able to bring in the Memorial Health Care System, which is ours, the South Broward Hospital District, to, once these individuals are tested and they need medical support, that they were available to provide the medical treatment for these individuals to directly help our people in the community. And we're currently have a request into the state to have for that site to also provide antibody testing as well. We have not received a response yet, but we're hopeful that that will take place. I did want to touch briefly, though, however, on the economic front. And since we were talking about helping Black companies, many years ago, before being elected commissioner in the city of Miramar in 2011, I served as chair of the Broward County Small Business Development Advisory Board. At that time, Broward County had an active MWBE program, which was challenged by the Associated General Contractors. And because of a data flaw in the disparity study that the county felt that they could not defend, it wasn't that disparity was not in Broward County and that it could not be defended, but because of a data error, they could not legally defend the data, and the program was abolished. And the legacy program, which was adopted while I was chair, was, instead of having the program just abolished, we made a recommendation to the county commission, the Board of County Commission, to put in and institute a race neutral program and gender neutral program, which was the CDBE program, which is now known as the CBE program. And it has helped a lot of Black companies, but because it's race and gender neutral, you're still competing against a broader marketplace. I think in cities like Miramar, where we have recently done a disparity study, if we can get a county disparity study, perhaps we can make the case that we can bring back that program. And I know if we can get Mayor Holness some support on the county commission, that I'm sure he would be a champion in promoting that, because then we can specifically say that we are helping Black companies by policy, because it's defended by the disparity study. The city of Miramar has performed a disparity study. The disparity, we were able to show a disparity. We piggyback off of the Broward County CBE program for our race gender program, and we're currently going through a process right now so that when the program is ultimately implemented, it can be defended, because we have a study in place, and we also showed with a neutral gender and race gender program, disparity exists, that we'll have a defensible program. That is a perfect example of how elected officials can use policy now to say that we have a problem. There's so many problems across the board, whether it's economic development, whether it's medical, whether it's so many aspects of our lives. Black people are always on the bottom end of the totem pole. And these are examples of when we can effectively put policies in place, then we can show and be able to defend our policies. Where we get in trouble is when we try to get contracts with folks outside of policy. And that's when you get into trouble. So we have to continue to press to put policies in place that then becomes our cover, because we're now within the law. That is how these rich white companies and majority companies, they use the law, they use policies to be able to manipulate, take advantage, and they do it legally in the open, and we shake our heads. So we have to continue to do these things. I'm very active with the African American Mayors Association, as well as the National Black Caucus of Local Elected Officials, where we share these best practices, where we can help Black people across the country to be able to bring in these policies so that we can not only help our local constituents, but help Black people across the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I think Commissioner Colburn wanted to add to that.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I did want to say that, you know, when COVID-19 first started, one of the first things that I did was to begin to look out for our senior residents. When they closed our senior centers and sent them home and tell them they had to be shut in, I began a feeding program where at least once a week we would take them a hot lunch. Many of them have chosen to be on Meals on Wheels, and some of them don't need it. But we have been providing a hot meal to our seniors as an initiative of mine every week. And I have to say thank you to some of the restaurants, the local restaurants, even Caribbean restaurants that have helped us out with that, donating food. B&M restaurant, Aunt I's restaurant, Latin American restaurant, and in county funds as well. But this has been an initiative that came out strictly out of the COVID-19. We didn't have it before, and it came directly out of that. In addition to that, you know, in terms of equity and equality in employment, at our last commission meeting, one of the things that I asked for, because something that keeps coming up over and over again, is statistics, numbers of Blacks and women and the entire structure of our safety, of our public safety departments, our fire and our police. The last ceremony that I went to for our fire department, there were no blacks. Certainly, you know, you are the most qualified person, but at the same time, you know, I truly need to understand, and we all need to understand, is there a recruitment process or what's in the system that's not allowing us to have equal amount of blacks and females and other culture in our public safety department. So we want to make sure that that happened, and that is another initiative very recently that because of this movement, it has sparked an interest again, although it's something that we have dealt with one way or another throughout.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. One more response before we wrap up. Mayor Holness, in the interest of time, could you keep it under 2 minutes, please, sir?
All right, I'm going to try. So being the mayor of Broward County gave me some advantage in that I built a relationship and started even before I became the mayor with Shane Strom, who's the chief of staff for the governor. And through that relationship, we were able to get in Broward County the first drive-through testing site at CB Simmons Park. I worked with Broward Health to set up another drive-through testing site in North Broward, and then in Central Broward at Central Broward Regional Park. We also had the first 2 walk-up testing sites in 2 of our poorest communities in zip code 33311 and in Pompano Beach. What I'm doing now, and there's so much more that we've done with food distribution and all of that, but in recent light of the situation that we find with police brutality, I just this week, actually Tuesday's meeting, got a direction to the county attorney to set up a civilian police review board, so we can look at police action and activities in Broward County, and board to see where we stand with that. Also, building a dismantling racist. We're now building on the 23rd of this month. I'll have racial equity training for all the county commissioners and department heads in Broward County, so we can understand how race affects us and how we can fix that. I worked closely with Sheriff Tony over the past year, and he's investing $1 million at this point in time. Started off with $500,000 to ensure that all BSO law enforcement personnel go through racial equity and implicit bias training. This past week, he added $500,000 to that, to where it's $1 million. And unfortunately, the previous sheriff wouldn't give us a mere $25,000. I sat down with this sheriff, and he was able to do $500,000 at the onset, now an additional $500,000 in order to ensure that we have racial equity training in Broward County.
Thank you very much, Mayor Holness. I think in the interest of time, we just bring closure to our discussion. We must be respectful of public services. If you've got workers, employees, and civil society at the table, with governments at all levels, then you can design the kind of future that takes into account the right priorities for people, the planet, and of course, the economy. One that serves for us, all of us. My highly regarded leaders, thanks for your leadership. We hope that our diaspora can use the information shared for our collective empowerment. We appreciate you. We thank you for the information, and we truly appreciate your participation. Thanks again, and have a good night. One love.
One love.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Love. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you, guys. Very informative.
Night. Very informative.
the conversation.